The CNN town hall stage was bathed in an unforgiving blaze of white-hot lights so bright that they erased every shadow and left nowhere to hide. The air was heavy charged, the kind of atmosphere that makes people lean forward without realizing it. Rows of faces filled the packed auditorium. Political aides, journalists, veterans, college students, each one with eyes locked on the stage, each one knowing they were about to witness something that could outlive the night itself. High above, cameras glided on silent crane like watchful hawks, their lenses adjusting to capture not just words but every twitch, every pause, every flicker of doubt or defiance. This wasn't just another political event. This was an arena, and everyone inside knew the stakes were higher than policy talking points. From the shadows at stage left, Jasmine Crockett emerged. The crowd's murmurs softened like a ripple calming across water. Her charcoal gray blazer was sharp and perfectly tailored, the kind of precision that said she'd come prepared for more than just words. A small gold pin on her lapel caught the light flashing briefly with each step. Her gaze was steady, calm, deliberate, and unflinching. Not the look of someone on the defensive, but of someone walking toward the fight because she'd already decided she wouldn't lose it. In her right hand, she carried a thin yellow folder. To most eyes, it was nothing, just a few sheets of paper. But to her, it was a loaded weapon. Inside were documents that could shift the room in an instant, truths that could cut through the noise and pierce straight to the heart of the night's biggest lie. Each page was prepared like ammunition, each fact polished and ready to fire. To Jasmine, this was more than a folder. It was armor. It was a sword. And tonight, she was walking into battle with both in her grasp. The stage awaited, the lights burning hotter with every step she took. Somewhere in the front row, a man in a veteran's cap adjusted his seat, eyes following her, like he already sensed the weight of what was about to unfold. The hum of cameras blended with the low murmur of the audience, creating a tense, unbroken rhythm that would carry right into the first shot fired. The camera cut away from Jasmine and swept across the stage, locking onto Donald Trump. He sat tall, his signature red tie perfectly centered against a crisp white shirt, the corners of his mouth curved into that familiar half smirk. His hands rested loosely on the desk, but his posture radiated readiness like a fighter waiting for the bell. Trump's eyes flicked toward the audience, then back to the moderator, soaking in the attention as if he owned the room. He adjusted his cufflink slowly, deliberately, as if to say, "I'm in control here." The lights caught the golden hue of his hair, the glint in his eyes sharpening under the glare. From the crowd, a hush began to settle. Phones were lifted, screens glowing as people prepared to capture the moment. You could almost feel it, a collective intuition that something was about to happen, something raw, unfiltered, and impossible to take back. The air itself seemed tighter. This wasn't the polite chatter of a standard political debate. This was the electric stillness before lightning strikes, the moment when everyone on stage and off knows the first blow is seconds away. Trump leaned into the microphone, his voice smooth, at first measured, almost conversational. He began with the safe territory of policy, border security, job protection, keeping America strong. His sentences rolled out like practiced lines honed over years on the rally stage. But then, almost imperceptibly, the tone shifted. His words tightened, the pauses between them shrinking. The rhetoric moved from abstract ideas to something far more pointed. He spoke of real Americans with an emphasis that landed heavy, his eyes scanning the audience before settling deliberately on Jasmine Crockett. The change was subtle enough to pass as ordinary to the inattentive ear, but everyone in the room could feel the undercurrent. Some people, he said, his hand making a vague, sweeping gesture, don't truly understand what this country stands for. It wasn't just about policy anymore. It was about belonging, about who gets to claim the title of American and who doesn't. The camera caught the smallest twitch at the corner of Jasmine's mouth, though her eyes never left him. The crowd shifted in their seats, sensing the line between political debate and personal attack had just been crossed. The air seemed to thicken, carrying the silent question. Was that aimed at her? Everyone knew the answer. Trump's hand came up suddenly, his index finger rigid and aimed straight at Jasmine. The smile was gone now, replaced by a sharp, almost cutting glare. His voice, no longer smooth, cracked like a whip across the room. Leave the USA. 3 words, short, blunt, and loaded. They hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then the reaction rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Gasps erupted from every corner of the room, sharp intakes of breath breaking the stillness. A few voices shouted in disbelief. Others muttered under their breath. The camera operators reacted instantly. Lenses zoomed in tight on Jasmine's face, capturing every detail, the stillness of her eyes, the faint tightening at her jaw, the way she didn't flinch, not even for a second. In the control room, producers barked orders over headsets. Social media feeds were already flashing red with breaking clips. Within seconds, hashtags began to form, bouncing from phone to phone. Leave the USA, # Crockett Trump, # who belongs. In the space of 3 seconds, the night had changed. This was no longer a debate, it was a national moment, and everyone knew it. Jasmine didn't rush. The words "Leave the USA" still hung in the air, but she let them stay there. Let them echo, let them sting. Her eyes, cold and steady, locked on Trump, not with rage, but with the kind of controlled focus that says, "I am choosing when this ends." The crowd was frozen, breaths caught halfway in their chests. Somewhere a chair creaked, the only sound breaking the tension. Even the moderator didn't dare cut in, yet everyone was waiting for her to either shatter the silence or let it consume him. The camera shifted slowly, deliberately to the front row. There sat a silver-haired veteran, his shoulders squared, his gaze locked on Jasmine. His weathered hands were folded over his knee, but his eyes told a different story. They were the eyes of someone who had stood at attention on battlefields, the eyes of someone who recognized the weight of the moment. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. In his stillness was an unspoken message. This is your shot. Make it count. Jasmine finally leaned toward the microphone, her movements unhurried, deliberate, like someone loading a single round into the chamber. My grandfather, she began, her voice calm, but carrying through every corner of the room, fought for this country. The words landed with the weight of steel on stone. She didn't rush to the next sentence, she let that first blow sink in. He wore the uniform, he bled on foreign soil, and he came home believing America's promise was meant for all of us. Each phrase was measured, each syllable struck with precision, as if she were nailing boards into the floor beneath her feet, building her ground plank by plank right there in front of everyone. The crowd shifted. Some leaned forward, sensing the momentum shift. The cameras caught Trump's jaw tighten, his eyes narrowing. This wasn't the silence of someone caught off guard anymore. This was the sound of someone taking control. In less than 30 seconds, the energy in the room had turned. She was no longer the one being judged. She was the one doing the judging. Jasmine reached for the golden file resting on the table, its leather cover worn at the edges, the kind of wear that comes from decades of being handled with care. She opened it slowly, not for drama's sake, but as if each page deserved a moment of respect. From the first sleeve, she pulled a faded military service record. The paper was yellowed, its edges fragile, but the ink still told a story in sharp black lines. This, she said, holding it up so the cameras could catch every word, is my grandfather's record of service. United States Army, 2 tours in Vietnam, Bronze Star Medal, Purple Heart, honorable discharge. She laid the paper down with reverence before retrieving something smaller, a medal still gleaming after all these years, its ribbon perfectly preserved. She placed it in front of her, where even those in the back rows could see it catch the light. Then her tone shifted, calm but edged like a blade. And here she said, pulling another folder, this one not golden but plain white, unremarkable, is the Trump family's record of service. She flipped it open. 3 draft deferments, all for medical reasons. She let the pause hang. No service, no sacrifice, just excuses. The air in the room seemed to grow heavier. A murmur rippled through the audience. On split screens, the networks had already cued a side-by-side, a young soldier in muddy fatigues, next to a clean-cut young Donald Trump holding a tennis racket. It wasn't just a political moment anymore. It was personal, visceral, and the contrast spoke louder than any speech could. For a moment, the room was suspended in silence, just the faint hum of the air conditioning and the distant click of a camera shutter. Then from the front row, a figure began to rise. An older man, his back straight despite the weight of years, adjusted the brim of his worn veteran's cap. The embroidered words, Vietnam veteran, U.S. Army, caught the light. I served. His voice carried steady but thick with something heavier than pride. And I knew men like her grandfather, men who bled for this country, men who never once asked if they belonged here. They proved it. He turned, eyes locking on Donald Trump. And I also know the difference between service and hiding behind excuses. Gasps erupted from the audience. Cameras whipped toward him. Reporters' fingers flew over keyboards. On social media, the clip was already being shared captions screaming about the veteran's truth bomb. In that moment, the energy in the room shifted. Jasmine wasn't standing alone anymore. The truth had stepped forward wearing a weathered cap and a lifetime of sacrifice. And the crowd knew it. The applause started slowly scattered, then built into a rolling thunder that drowned out everything else. It didn't take hours. It didn't even take minutes. Within seconds, the 9-second clip of the veteran standing up for Jasmine was everywhere. The moment he adjusted his cap and delivered that line, "I know the difference between service and hiding behind excuses," hit the internet like a match to dry grass. On Twitter, the hashtag #WeBelongHere exploded, climbing into the top trending slot in under 15 minutes. TikTok was flooded with stitched reactions, some crying, some saluting, others simply nodding in fierce agreement. Facebook feeds lit up as family members tagged one another. "Watch this. This is how you speak truth to power." By the time the town hall was halfway through, over 3.2 million views had been counted across platforms. Cable news producers scrambled to cut the clip for the evening lineup. In group chats and comment threads, people weren't just talking about Jasmine anymore, they were rallying around her. It was no longer just a Senate town hall moment, it was a movement. By the time the town hall wrapped, the political aftershocks were already shaking Washington. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News networks that rarely agreed on anything were all running the clip on repeat. Chyrons blared veteran fact checks. Trump Crockett moment goes viral. Even late-night hosts were already sharpening their monologues. In the halls of Congress, reporters swarmed senators for comment. Some Republicans stuck to their talking points, but more than a few shifted uncomfortably in front of the cameras. Even centrist voices who had stayed silent in past controversies were now weighing in. Former Senator Jeff Flake tweeted, "Service deserves respect, period." Republican veterans groups issued carefully worded statements calling for civility and recognition of sacrifice. For Trump, the blow was more than just bad optics. It was political oxygen feeding a fire he couldn't control. What had started as a calculated jab at Jasmine Crockett had morphed into a full-blown narrative about patriotism, service, and belonging. And in that narrative, he was on the losing side. The victory in the court of public opinion came with a dark cost. Within hours of the viral clip, Jasmine's congressional office inbox was flooded not just with messages of support, but with a torrent of rage. Subject lines screamed in all caps, "Traitor, leave our country, you'll pay for this." Threats came from anonymous email addresses, burner social media accounts, even handwritten letters with no return address. Some were vague, dripping with menace. Others were explicit enough to make even seasoned staffers pale. By nightfall, the Capitol Police had assigned a security detail to her. Uniformed officers took shifts outside her district office, while plainclothes agents shadowed her movements in D.C. Inside, staff members whispered to one another, glancing nervously at every unexpected knock on the door. Jasmine knew this wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about the cost of speaking truth in a country still wrestling with its demons. The threats hadn't stopped. If anything, they had grown sharper, more venomous. Yet amid the storm, an email landed in Jasmine's private inbox, a formal invitation from CNN. "We'd like to invite you to participate in round 2 of the Town Hall series," it read. The date was set, the venue was bigger, and this time the network promised equal speaking time. Jasmine stared at the screen for a long moment. Her staff shifted uneasily around the conference table. They all knew this wasn't just another appearance, it was a chance to reclaim the narrative entirely, or risk losing it forever. The strategy session stretched late into the night. Laptops glowed under tired eyes, coffee cups stacked in messy towers. Charts of polling data and social media sentiment lined the walls. Her communications director laid it out plainly. "We can't just defend Jasmine. We have to dismantle his entire talking point brick by brick so there's nothing left for him to stand on." Jasmine nodded slowly, the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. This wouldn't be survival. This would be demolition. The second town hall was nothing like the first. The venue was grander, the lights hotter, the tension sharper. Every seat in the auditorium was filled and millions more were watching live. When Jasmine stepped onto the stage, she wasn't just a congresswoman anymore. She was the embodiment of defiance. The tailored navy suit, the subtle gold pin of her grandfather's regiment on her lapel, and that same golden folder in her hand, it was all intentional. Trump smirked from the opposite podium, but this time Jasmine didn't wait for him to strike. She opened with a calm, steady voice that carried to every corner of the hall. Before we debate policy tonight, let's talk about something deeper about what it truly means to be an American. She spoke of sacrifice of service, of the quiet courage of immigrants who built lives from nothing, of soldiers who bled for a country that didn't always love them back. She wove her grandfather's story into a broader truth, one that transcended party lines. The audience leaned forward, caught in her rhythm. Even those who had come to boo her now sat in silence listening. When she finished, there was no polite applause. There was an eruption, people rising to their feet, clapping, cheering, some even wiping away tears. And for the first time, it was Trump who looked small on that stage. The screen fades from the roaring applause of the town hall to a quiet, overcast afternoon in a small veteran cemetery. The wind carries the faint rustle of leaves and the world seems to slow down. Jasmine walks alone, the golden folder still in her hands. But this time it is not for debate, it is for remembrance. She kneels by a simple, weathered gravestone, its inscription barely visible, but the name still shining in her heart, her grandfather's. From the folder, she pulls out a fresh copy of his service record and his photograph in uniform, young, proud, unshaken by the storms he faced. She places them gently on the stone, her voice steady but thick with emotion. Your fight didn't end when you came home, and mine won't end here. For a moment, she rests her hand on the cold granite as if to pass on the promise. The camera slowly pulls back the gravestone, framed against the open sky, and her voice returns stronger, directed to the audience now. When you hear someone being told they don't belong, what will you do? Fade to black. This story is more than a political clash. It's a reminder that identity is not granted by others, but earned through the lives we live and the values we defend. It shows that silence in the face of injustice is not neutrality, it's permission. Jasmine's stand proves that the most powerful response to hate is truth backed by courage. If you believe that everyone deserves to belong, no matter where they come from, join us. Subscribe now and turn on the notification bell because we're telling the stories the mainstream media want. Stand with the truth, stand with justice,